views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. It's the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, heard every week at this time. In fact, twice a week at this time. Figure that one out. But right now, with guests in the studio and ready to fill you in on what's going on, here's Sue Ellen Sanders.
Well, with that kind of lead-in, you know I have to explain that, okay?
I didn't have any audience applause.
So Saturday, if you're listening on Saturday, of course, this show runs at 11:05 on Saturday morning, but then it also reruns the same show on Monday at 6:05 p.m. So if you're in the car and you're driving at that time, or if you heard something that was really good and you want to listen to it a second time, you'll be able to do that. It's also available on demand, so to speak, on the internet, and so you can really listen to it all the time. But I don't recommend it. Highly do not recommend it.
Oh, you can listen to it over and over again on YouTube, the archives of the Sue Ellen Sanders Show. Go to WPSLTV.com and go ahead and do a Sue Ellen Sanders binge. It works.
No. No, thank you, though. Okay. So I have with me today, and I think the timing is really perfect for this, at least in my eyes. I have Jason Fletcher, who is the director of the Coalition for Christian Outreach that's affiliated with Westside Church, and also Troy Ingersoll, who has several hats on. He is a volunteer and a worker for the Coalition for Christian Outreach, as well as the youth minister for very many years for Westside Church. It's Westside Church now, not Westside Baptist Church.
No, ma'am, yes, it's Westside Church. I've been there for 20 years.
Oh,
over
good
20 years.
God, since you were a youth yourself.
Practically, just as soon as I got out of college.
And the other hat, of course, that Troy wears is his school board hat. So he's a school board member, and from time to time, he has also served as school board chairman. So he's got some multiple hats that he's wearing in the studio today. Jason, too, is also, his background is as an educator. And he comes from an interesting place in that he has been involved with his church family at Westside for about 10 years. Coincidentally, a little bit longer than he's been married and has two adorable children, because as some of us know, it's really a cool thing to have a church family when you have a family, to make the connections. So he's been involved for about 10 years, but before that, he actually grew up an atheist, and so he can kind of relate to our discussion here on both sides of the table. We're going to be talking about the importance of having some type of God in your life, whether it be a Christian God or a Muslim God or whatever God, especially in today's times with youth who are growing up and maybe not easily finding their way. So welcome to the show. And Jason, it's really hard to do a radio show with gum in your mouth. And as the English teacher, I'm going to tell you, take the gum out of your mouth and don't put it under the desk, please.
Wow, she's towing the line on you already.
That's a perfect spot, though. That's where all the students put theirs.
I am not kidding. The kids go, why can't we choose gum in class? But I have taken pictures of kids who, not the kids, the gum themselves, where they literally took the gum and put it on the wall of my classroom.
Oh, nasty.
Talk about in your face. Mrs. Sanders, I'm going to chew my gum and I'm going to show you it. So anyhow, back to the big picture, though. So, Jason, we're gonna start looking at, the big picture, of course. 2 weeks ago, in Parkland, only 90 minutes south of here, there was our own tragedy, and it was our tragedy because it was the Florida version of the school shooting that we've become scarily accustomed to hearing about. And your kids are little, but my kids are older. My kids are 23 and 24, and they have never lived a time where they weren't worried about school shootings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, my thoughts and prayers go out to those families. It's tough to sit there as a parent and watch that unravel on the screen, and just the not knowing. I could feel the parents grieving as whether or not knowing what was going on. And as my daughter sat there with me and we watched it, and it was just a sad day. Immediately we went to prayer. I think that's what we do in our family, is immediately going to prayer for the families, for the victims, for those that will be impacted for days beyond. And we're just, like I said, it's a tough situation that's becoming more and more common these days. And like I said, I pray every night. That's something that I've added to my prayers quite a bit. It was just safety for the children and the nation.
And, you know, we all hold them close in our hearts, and we think about the parents, and we think about those other students, and we think about how the children's lives have changed, the ones who survived but saw a classmate down on the floor in front of them, or heard the sound of the gunshots. And, you know, with today's social media, we were able to listen live to people posting things on Twitter from inside the school, and it was scary as hell.
Absolutely. I don't have Twitter or Facebook or any of those social
I know, we
medias.
just taught
Jason's
you how
like
to
a
do.
dinosaur.
I'm young.
No, we just taught him
I just
how to
turned
do
35
Facebook.
yesterday, but I hear that the students are using these kind of things.
Yes, yeah.
And to be able to see that captured on video, I've seen some of the horrific videos that were captured that day. And like I said, it's just continued prayer. That's my thoughts. And to pray for not only the victims, but to also be praying for the heart of the person that did this. That I just pray for that person to have peace. And it's tough when you're praying for an enemy at times. And especially like in a school setting like that with so many kids, that just having access to that building with everything going on. And I'm just thankful that it wasn't 30 or 40. It is tough. And again, my heart's out to all those families.
And Troy, your comments?
Yeah, I just also want to touch. This has been a tough time for St. Lucie County this year. 2018 has been really rough.
It has.
Our students have had to realize what life is really about and how quickly life can end. We had one student get burned, fighting for her life, and she's turned the tide, and she's still fighting, and she has good days, she has bad days, and you can follow her on her blog. We had we had another student get burned pretty bad, almost 3 weeks later. And then we had 2 students pass away. And these students were pretty well woven in different networks of their career or their young life. They're in ag, they're involved in their schools. So many kids have been influenced by tragedy. And then finally we have Parkland that just was the icing on the cake. Our guidance counselors and our life crisis people at the schools had been very, very busy. And when I say we have a crisis team that goes in and talks to, number one, they talk to the teachers first, and they talk to the principal, make sure everyone's fine, and then they start opening up the kids, and just kids that want to open up their hearts and talk. That's what they are. That's what these people are there for. Social workers, mental health people. And in fact, we even sent some down to Parkland these couple of days just to help out. The governor asked for people to send some resources down there, and St. Lucie County stepped up. I'm proud of Superintendent Gent for what he did too, saying, hey, we need to send some people down there, because if it was us, we wouldn't have the capability to reach these students. You know, we would be asking from Martin County or Broward or Miami-Dade to help us out to reach our students. So, I mean, it's been a community event where we all have felt this pain and this enormous burden that it just a bunch of accidents and evil in the world.
And that's very true. And I know that you mentioned some of the things that have happened, and even before, when you're talking about this school year, though, there have been several recent high school graduates from both Port St. Lucie High and Lincoln Park Academy, and some of the other high schools that were also involved in accidents and fatalities. And it was already a year, I think, that the students were reeling, and the young ladies that you're talking about that were in the car accident, both Jason and I taught one of those young ladies, and the day that everyone found out about that car accident and who was in that car accident, as a teacher at Lincoln Park, I had 11th graders coming in to the class and bursting into tears in the class. And it was, we were like sending people to the guidance counselor and trying to comfort them, and kids who were crying and saying, I don't understand, and it felt like there was one tragedy after the other. And these kids, especially in high school and in early college years, those are the years that you all work with, both as a youth minister and through the Coalition for Christian Outreach. These kids, they're not sure how to handle the tragedy, but they know they want to do something. And they also, especially with the shooting, they know that they have to do something other than just send their prayers and good wishes. And that's what you're hearing now, and you're hearing from the high school students at Parkland. And you're hearing, and I just heard it at a student-led Lincoln Park Academy rally just this week, talking about, it's time for action. So they're thinking that they do need to take action, that they do need to, whether they're dealing with elderly drivers or drunk drivers or people who have come into a classroom with a gun and in cold blood murdered their classmates. Whatever it is, it's kind of a combination. They feel they need to do more, and yet they're not sure how to do it. They're not sure how to go about it. They're not sure how to even start.
So let me touch on something, Sue Ellen, because we're talking to a different type of crowd that me and Jason normally work with. And someone sitting at home or watching us is sitting there thinking, well, what's different? What's the difference between when I grew up and what these kids are going through? Well, when I was growing up in high school, I only remember one kid passing away, and it was because of ODing on drugs. And within the first 8 years of just living here in St. Lucie County, I really don't remember the tragedies that we had here. One could be because of social media, but two was because we didn't have the opportunities that students have today. When I was growing up, not many kids had cars.
Mm-hmm.
We were still riding the bus. Our parents were working, we were working hard. And not to say that kids aren't working hard today, but kids have cars and are out there driving, and there's more opportunities for them to have these tragedies. And not only that, social media is so huge that 10:30 on that Tuesday night, when I saw the news, first thing I did was not keep on watching the news. I start going to Facebook to see if anyone knew, and then I start texting my friends saying, hey, do you know what students these are? Because we have 3 or 4 students that live out on Header Canal Road. And you're just sitting there saying, please, God, just not let it be these two. And I think that's an advancement, is that people know more quicker. And the other thing is that life is so short that the kids that we work with don't think about that. They think that they get in a car or a vehicle, or they think they go to school, that there's always going to be a tomorrow.
And teenagers especially, mm-hmm. They feel like they are absolutely invincible. That there's that they read about something, but it's not going to happen to them. And then all of a sudden, with the number of things that have happened this year, and I agree, I just don't remember a time where there's been this much, this closely together. And a lot of times as a parent, you look at things and you think to yourself, well, that can't happen to me because I don't live in Ohio, or I don't go to that school, or I don't do this. And as more and more tragedy has hit us and hit our children, they're seeing more parallels to their lives, to the people, especially in Parkland. I think the fact that these teenagers, the survivors, have stepped up and they have controlled the media narrative, and so our kids, I think, are seeing these kids and saying they can step up. I can step up too.
Exactly, you're right, and I'm so proud of those students going to Tallahassee and raising some, not just good points, but common sense points. Why are kids able to buy an AR-15 at 18 years old when they can't buy a weapon until they're 21? So I think you'll think this will be funny, but my brother got hired in the sheriff's office when he was 20 years old. Who do you think bought his gun? Because at that time they couldn't buy a weapon.
They couldn't, yeah.
My dad bought his duty gun so that my brother could go to work.
Because he couldn't
buy his own
and
for the sheriff's office.
There was
an
a
officer.
reason. There was a reason for that.
Yeah.
And this show is not going to debate gun control.
Oh, definitely
and
not.
It's not going to debate whether or not students have access. It's just what we're talking about is the teenagers and the young adults and their reaction and action.
And I say that because their action in Tallahassee is causing, people to open up their eyes and reevaluate. I'll tell you another story that happened in St. Lucie County years and years and years ago, and you'll know the young girl I'm talking about is Jessica Clinton. She passed away. She was a cheerleader at Centennial, and unfortunately, she had a heart attack and passed away at
Right
Centennial.
after cheerleading
Right
practice,
after cheerleading
yeah.
practice. Her parents, made it a vow, made a nonprofit, and says this will never happen to any child in St. Lucie County again. They will have the proper equipment to save a life.
And those defibrillators,
AEDs, are
yeah.
useful. Now, fast forward this to my sons at football practice 2 years ago, and he's out there. They're doing their spring conditioning, and all of a sudden, in the back part of the school, the kid passes out and his heart stops. And you can see the football players, these big tough guys, Central's team's 6-2, and they're out there crying and yelling for the coach as quick as they can, coach, coach, coach. And one guy grabs the AED and goes out and saves that kid's life. And that was just because of Mr. and Mrs. They're not Clinton, but because of Jessica Clinton Foundation, that kid's life was saved.
And so basically, Jessica Clinton saved that kid's life. Which has got to be
amazing story.
Yeah.
And what was interesting? Just the next week, they were there to give us another AED. And I told them that story. I said, "Hey, I just want you to know my son's life was touched seeing another kid get saved." And hopefully, from these tragedies and these prayer vigils and these student gatherings, that they're learning something. Number one, life is valuable, but also take a stand and make a difference in our community, make a difference in Tallahassee. Open our eyes so that we can see our ways or need to be changed.
And making a difference in whatever way you can, however you can, in whatever way you decide is best, and having an opinion and voicing that opinion. Now, of course, there's a separation of church and state.
Yes, ma'am.
So in our schools, we do not, after we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we don't do a prayer.
No, ma'am, we don't.
And not at school. But there are opportunities for student-led prayer vigils before school. Like at the flagpole, we monthly have a prayer vigil for the young lady who was involved in the New Year's Eve burn accident, because she's fighting incredible odds, and she is fighting every day, and that's you got to believe. You got to believe in the strength of prayer when you're in a situation that's all you can do. And here, that is totally a situation where there's nothing else that we can do. We can go around, we can raise money, we can sell t-shirts, we can help the family, we can donate sick days to the mom so she's got time to spend with her daughter and doesn't have to worry about that. But we can't make a difference in any other way except for by sending our good wishes and prayers. But then there's other situations like the situation with a car accident with, you might be dealing with whatever it is, whether it's drunk driving and texting, or elderly drivers, and you hear the kids, you hear them saying, oh, I can make a difference here. I can change laws. I am a hair's breadth away from voting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, what these kids are learning to do is become one. I think that's so important, is because instead of like debating, or being bullied or something, they're all coming together and trying to voice one voice rather than different voices. And I think that's so important, so that they're going to have a camaraderie that when I graduated I didn't have. They're going to have these memories where they came together and hopefully rallied behind something that's going to be positive, turning a negative into a positive.
And making positive change. So poor Jason's been sitting here and shaking his
Yeah.
head yes, and he's like, and that's part of what you're doing now. So your background is as an educator, and we've been talking about how it is possible for the students to unite, and a lot of times they need adults' help to get there. They need maybe an adult's permission or a adult to lead them together to unite. And that's one of the things that the Coalition for Christian Outreach has brought to the Treasure Coast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and why you're doing it?
Absolutely. Well, I was at a private institution here in Fort Pierce, Florida for a little over 4 years, and had a beautiful office overlooking the water, comfortable. Played baseball in college, so I was able to coach the baseball team, be an athletic director. I felt like I had my dream job at that point in time. Then I was approached with coming into college ministry, and I said, I don't know, I'm pretty comfortable here right now. And then I just felt led to go speak to college students and to share my testimony with them. To where I was in college, I wasn't the Jason that you know today, but to kind of lead them in the direction where I know that those are the years that we are trying to identify ourselves with, identify who we're going to be, what we're going to become, and I wanted to try to see if maybe they would listen to me and have God part of that future for them. So now what I'm doing now is that having life groups at the church, at the college house on our campus, and then also taking part in Bible studies on the IRSC campus and reaching out to them. I think a statistic that really pushed me over the edge there was to influence me to go in this direction was that right now 2% of college students are being reached by ministry groups like CCO and FCA and Campus Crusades and ministries like that. So I wanted to try to do my part in trying to make a difference here locally at the IRSC campus, a place where, again, I was not the best person in the entire world.
So you can totally relate to the students that are out there because you were them.
I can relate with them very well, yes, absolutely.
And Troy, as youth minister at Westside Church, I'm sure you see that there's that transition. You got the kids and you got them strongly as when they're like in middle school and they're all like, oh, we get to do something without mom and dad. We got our own thing. We get to go to youth group. We have trips and fun stuff. And then there comes a time where they're starting to age a little bit out of that and they need something more.
Yeah, that junior, senior year, you start seeing a little bit more independence, and the kids are driving and they get to choose to come to church or not. And once they graduate, they're like, what's next? Where do I go next? Probably half of our student ministry ends up going to a 4-year university, but the other half are sitting here where they're going into a college and career or to a career tech thing or just going in the workforce or coming to going to IRCC. And Jason's done a phenomenal job reaching out to those students and getting them involved. When you start looking, we have over 20, 30 college students just being molded by Jason, and Jason just does more than teaching God. He's teaching them financial skills. He's teaching them financial responsibility. He's teaching them time management, study skills, because sometimes these students are used to going to high school from 7:30 in the morning to 1:30. Now they only got 2 classes a day, and they're not like, well, what do I do the rest of the time?
And they think that
Jason says, come meet with me, and then I'll show you how to get a job, and I'll show you some other things.
And I remember, and this is your son's first year away at
Yes,
college, isn't it?
yes.
I remember when my kids both went, well, my daughter went away to college, my son stayed local. But when he was in college, he was thinking that if he wasn't in class, it was okay to binge watch Netflix and to nap. And so... And the same with my daughter, except for I didn't get to watch it.
I don't think your daughter was like that. I think she was more disciplined as an athlete and everything else.
Well,
I know,
she did have the athletic connection, but
my son's like your son
Yeah.
is like, son, can I call you before noon and you actually answer the phone?
the interesting
That's most of my students
thing,
now. What are you talking about?
The interesting thing that I found with both of my kids was the busier they were, the more productive they were. And you would think it was the opposite, that during a season where they didn't have a particular sport, when my daughter was in high school, she did 3 different sports, and then there was that extra 2 months at the end of the year where she wasn't doing any sport at all.
And grades plummet.
Her grades plummeted. She had all this extra time. She didn't have 2 different practices, and nothing got done.
And the sun's out, and they're
Nothing
going
got-
to the
Yes.
beach, and you're just sitting there thinking, why am I paying more money in gas?
Yeah, I don't get it. But it's true for adults, too, that the busier we are, the more productive we are, because we're forced to be productive. And so I really appreciate, Jason, that you are teaching the kids. It's almost laughable sometimes when I think
Trying
about it.
to teach them what the word productive means in many ways. But,
Because it's got to be a challenge.
it is definitely a
Yeah.
challenge, especially in these days. Even growing up, we laugh about it in our life group that I grew up with AOL. Dial up. We just kind of push the button, go take a shower, you come back, and it's just signing up. Where now these kids, they're on so many social media sites now, and a lot of their influences are not coming from in the house. It seems like they're getting their influences from these social media networks and some of these
because there's
things.
so much they can see.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's out there. And they can see it all in real time. And so everything is totally changed for them. And I think the way to combat all the stuff that they're seeing online is got to be that personal touch that you get either through your youth group at church or through your sports team, because a lot of times, I'll tell you what, the coaches of the different sports teams, and I'm a coach too, whether we work for a private school or we work for a public school, if the kids want to do a prayer before they get ready to start their 5K or their football game, it's up to the kids. They're allowed to do that. And that's the other thing about even thinking about prayer in school, is because I remember my daughter coming to me and saying in elementary school, well, Mommy, if I've got to pray about something, that there's no chance for me to pray in school. And I said, there's chances all the time, because you can make your prayer a silent one. Thinking about 9/11, how old were you when?
I was
when
actually a freshman at IRSC. I remember waking up in my bed because I did not go to class that morning, and seeing it on the TV, and just kind of just in awe and feel numb.
And
be able to
what
see
was
that.
your reaction as a college freshman?
This is
and
not
you were
happening.
away from home
This
too.
is not happening.
Yeah, and you don't know where to turn, and you're seeing it happen real time. And and you don't know what to do. And the churches that year reached out to everybody. And I think, Troy, you can attest to this. I remember reading that church membership was way up that year.
Oh, we were probably averaging anywhere from 850 to 900, and then that Sunday afterwards, we probably had 1,200 people in church that Sunday. And we had open the service, open the doors for just people come and pray, and just people we haven't seen in a while just coming to pray.
So, and again, this show is not about telling young people or telling the listeners that they should go to church or what church they should go to. It's just, I think that it's just talking about the opportunities out there, and that there are opportunities out there for our youth, and it's important for our youth to find solace some way. And this is an awesome way. Even somebody who may feel left out in a school situation, that they're going to find their club somewhere.
Yeah. And Sue Ellen, I want to touch on that too, just to make sure that your audience knows, is this has to be student initiated.
Yes.
So an FCA guy just can't go in there and say, I'm going to start a club. No, a student has to find the FCA guy, and has to find a teacher sponsor and say, hey, can we meet? Same thing with First Priority or whatever. And it's just not that. If you want to start a sailing club or a chess club, they all start the same way. It's just whatever particular interest that child has, that student has, that's how that club starts.
So it starts from the grassroots, from the students, and then they come and they talk about what they want to work with, what they want to deal with. And usually it's either before or after school
or
club,
sometimes during lunchtime,
or
just depending.
But
also at the elementary level, it starts with the student, but it starts with the parent saying, hey, this would be a cool club to have at school, and then the child has to go talk to the teacher. So sometimes it starts with the parents at the younger age. So.
And I think it's really good to point that out, because a lot of times parents will go, well, my kid's school doesn't have this, and my kid's school doesn't have that. Well, that's because your kid didn't bring it up to the table. Your kid didn't suggest it, because there's a lot of different opportunities. Now at the high school level, I see at the beginning of the year the kids coming and talking to the different teachers. Will you be our sponsor to do this? Will you be your sponsor for this? And they will be, there helping the students or allowing them to come to their classroom and telling them what the time is. But it's a student-led operation, especially at the high school level.
It's the same thing for a Coalition for Christian Outreach, that this ministry group started, and it is student-led. I have a president, I have a vice president, I have a secretary, that they lead this club. And I'm just there to kind of oversee and discuss topics. All of our topics are, what are college students going through today in the college? Depression seems to be one that keeps coming up quite a bit. And I think, again, going back to the social media, some of that is stemmed from that. But
because they see what's out there, and they think that everybody has got something better than them. And to put it in perspective, okay, the whole Instagram, yes, Jason, I know you don't have Instagram.
Photo
yes.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they post the picture on Instagram, and they're never going to post a picture of something that's not good that's happening to them. They're not going to post a picture of them at their worst. They're always so the kids are looking at their friends posting pictures of the fun things they're doing, or them looking at their best, or the exciting things that they've done, and the person back at home looking on their cell phone is looking at, oh, everybody is doing fun things but me. And that can be depressing.
Well, I've seen sometimes they're taking 20 pictures and trying to look at that one. But it's even more than that. It's how many likes can I get on my photo?
I know. It's a competition.
It's a competition, but if they don't get that many, that's where depression is. Is like only 200 people liked my thing as opposed to the 400 this person got. What's wrong with me? And it's just like, why put yourself in that position?
The other thing I think that's important, and one of the reasons that and actually I booked Jason for this radio show before the Parkland tragedy, but there had already been, and I was thinking about the car accidents that had taken place, and about the students' reaction to them, and the fact that they need each other. They need each other more than ever when something bad happens to somebody else that's part of their little circle. And you see that when you see the student-led memorials, when they go out and they have vigils and they pray and they sing together. And if they weren't able to do that, if they had no ability to organize like that, it would be so much worse for everybody to carry that by themselves. But let's talk about the person who has not a lot of friends. How can, either working in a youth group situation or working with a Christian coalition, or how can that make a difference for that kid?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
It helps them feel welcome. Everybody that's involved with our groups, they're very welcoming to all. We just had somebody new come to our group, and the first thing he said was, "I can't believe how welcomed I feel here. Like, thank you for that. That means really a lot to me." And like I said, we're all kind of on the same page. We do everything together, where we don't seclude anybody from our groups. When we go camping, or if we're gonna, we just got back from cold Pittsburgh this weekend. We were up there for 3 days with 14 students up there for a conference, and it was an amazing time. We did most of the things together with dinner, or whether it's prayer or workshops, whatever it may be. It's a family it's a family feeling is really what I would say.
And I'm really glad that you brought up some of the activities you do, because I don't want people to think, or students to think, that we're just going to just sit around in a circle and pray, because that's not what it's all about at all.
Oh no, I have a lot of fun. It's like I said, movies. We go camping. We went down up to Gainesville, and we were at with Ginny Springs. We were up there with a group of them, and Troy can also talk about some of his things that he does. They have an amazing time with his youth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always seeing your posts about what your kids are doing next, and to sign up, and don't forget to be a part of this. And they have their own things like Super Bowl parties that are just for them, and different events. And I will say the best college tour on this Treasure Coast.
No.
I also want to mention too the serve opportunities there for the community. I think that's important for both Troy and I too. The serve
I thought
opportunities.
you were saying surf.
No, serve. Surf. Of course, surfing too.
I can guarantee you, Jason's no
I
surfer.
do not surf.
No social media.
I do
no
not
surfer.
That's too much. That's too much work for me. But serve opportunities
I
that
gotcha.
we use some of our students to give back to the community, and we've connected with a local organization here, nonprofit that once a month we serve for them, helping with the homeless. It not only is what we're told to do, but it's also kind of allows them to go out there, take time out of their schedule, or take time out of their nap, whatever they prefer, to give something back. And I think that's important too. And then anywhere between 10 or 15 people come out there on the third Sunday of every month. And it also allows for others that may be uncomfortable coming to the group to go do something where it's not going to be a different, that kind of setting.
Yeah, it's kind of like an activity where you're not feeling like you're just showing up and you're the new kid in town. Plus, I know that when you start volunteering early and serving early, then that helps create what you're going to become the rest of your life. You get used to that type of service in your life, and whether you do it through a church, or whether you do it through Kiwanis or Rotary or whatever you do, you usually at some point in your student life had some example set for you. Either your parent dropped you off and said, okay, you're going to help build this house for Habitat for Humanity, or help paint, or whatever, to give back to other people, and that probably also helps, not just with them getting to know each other, but it also helps make the person who feels like they're the odd man or woman out feel more part of it, because maybe they're not the best one in math class, but boy, they can swing
some paint.
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Well, students, whether in high school or college, they like to do two things. Well, actually, about three things. Number one, eat. So as long as they're eating together,
Yeah.
they're having fun.
Yeah.
They're all socializing because, almost all the activities, whether through Kiwanis or whatever, they're all supposed. Sorry about my hands.
That's
They're all-
okay,
they're
as
all-
long as you don't touch the table, it's okay. It's not as bad as Jason with the gum.
I was taken out early.
but they're all supposed to be getting together and eating together, and when they're working together, they're all supposed to be working together as a team, and it just shows how much they can accomplish too. They look at this facility that they're supposed to paint, whether it's Kiwanis or Westside or whoever, what youth group, and they say, how in the world are we going to accomplish this? This is going to take us 2 days, 3 days. And lo and behold, they're done in 2 or 3 hours because each one, had a certain task and did their job. And it just goes to show that when you work together, you can accomplish much.
Both my kids had a kindergarten teacher whose name was Sandy Picano.
Oh, yes,
And-
Miss Picano.
And Miss Picano used to teach the kids, and both my kids thought she was like God.
We
that
all
she
do.
knew more than anybody else. And she told the kids that teamwork is fun work.
Mhm.
And so when we'd be like, okay, Jake, it's your turn to clear the table, he'd go, well, we should all do it because Mrs. Picano says.
That's when your husband goes, oh.
I know. But the kids discover that not only can they do more as a group, and the groups that to go back to the teen leaders who are now leading the discussion about school safety. They see that their voices together, their actions together, can actually accomplish so much more than everybody doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's the not what can I get out of this world, but what can I give back to this world mentality that we're trying to push across, and serving others, helping others. Like I said, even if it's just somebody close, and you kind of carried along with me later on in life too. As I see somebody that needs help, I want to help them. It just kind of goes right along with that.
It could be just as easy, just as simple as holding the door open for somebody, or and you see it and you can tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You can just be by observing as an adult kids together. You see which ones have learned their lesson well and which ones practice that on a regular basis. But also, you talked about this with the leadership of the Coalition for Christian Outreach, and you see that with your youth group too, because you have leaders as well. But these kids are learning lessons on how to lead. The whole thing with the Parkland kids, and I want to talk about that for a minute again. The students and people saying, "Oh, well, someone's coached them." Well, yeah. They've been coached all their life. They've been coached in Little League to do the right thing. They've been coached in English class how to give a speech. They've been coached in drama club how to stand up on a stage and talk into a microphone. And it's no accident that these are a bunch of young leaders that have risen to the top, that have become spokespeople for the other teenagers, because they have been coached. They've been coached all their lives, and they're the ones that have listened and taken the lessons well.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because I said the same thing when I was talking to my wife. I said, man, listen to those kids. They're well-spoken, well thought out. And I think she researched it, or she could be like telling me something that's not really true, but I'll tell the world this. But they also, their whole school does debate.
Yes.
So
their school does debate, and some of the kids that are at their forefront of speaking are in the theater.
Oh, okay.
So they are theater kids.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the other kids, and you could, I know your wife is just like me. When you're a teacher, you're like out there. You got to find out the reason why. You got to find it. You
You're
can't
right.
just sit by.
Exactly. And I was like, but I think she was telling me the whole entire school has to go through the debate class. I don't think it's like the whole entire debate, like a whole 2 semesters. But it was like, yeah, they had to do a semester of debate so that everyone felt comfortable debating their side or their point in different facets of whatever they're debating.
And another thing that I just picked up in that where they're talking about the different classrooms that students were in when the shooting started, there was a group of students who were in the history classroom that was dedicated to Holocaust studies. Did you pick up on that?
Yes, I did.
They have a class that the kids can take that just gears on Holocaust studies. So these kids are already being taught the life lessons, the world lessons about learning about history so history doesn't repeat itself.
And it's a good point you make there, because a lot of times when kids do research or something, they go to like Wikipedia or they go to one source, and they don't look outside of just one source, and they don't look at other people's opinions or other people's values. So when they start looking and seeing, their eyes are open to a brand new world. Not just like, oh, this is the way the world is, but no, there's another side, or maybe we can compromise. So I find it very interesting.
And it's true that, it's not an accident that I think that teenagers today have gotten a bad rap, actually, where people say, oh, they're the millennium kids and they're lazy and they just binge watch Netflix and that's all they do. But that's not all they do. And when they do something, they really step up. And the other thing that's important is for our kids to see other students stepping up, whether they're leaders or whether they're trying to make a difference or whether they're serving, because the kids, the students, they learn by example.
Letting them know that their voice can be heard. I think that's important here too. When a lot of times the students, maybe they can't speak up without raising their hand in the classroom. I remember you were big on that. But also just understand that they can be heard. Just cause
otherwise you're anarchist.
Yes, just because you're in high school does not mean that you cannot fight something that you believe in. I think that's important.
And I think more and more, like, for example, next week, the kids in 2 of my classes are doing persuasive speeches. And I did not limit what they wrote about. And so there are students who are now doing research on gun control and the debate in regards to marijuana legalization, and having, one of them is even doing on having God in your life, having religion in your life, the importance of acknowledging God. So they should be encouraged to voice what's important to them and to research and find out what other people think.
I'll tell you another thing, almost in the same point before you went a little bit step further. But these kids are also needed by elderly people like my parents. They need my children, and the reason is because when they get in their car, they can't figure out how to program stuff.
How's your dad going to feel about you calling him elderly
Nah.
on the radio? I'm just
A
saying.
little bit more mature than me.
Yeah.
Yes. But seriously, he calls me and says, how do you program
Yeah,
this? I said,
yeah.
I really don't know how, Dad. Why don't you ask Seth or Ava, my children, and they can go help you
Yeah.
program your car. Because now, these kids know so much more than what I did as a teenager. They are so much more advanced in math and stuff like that they're a little bit more, you hate to give them too much credit, because when the time you do, then it's a little bit crazier. But yeah, they
But you have to give him some credit.
yeah, you got to.
My 8-year-old helps me with my smartphone, so.
Yes, and I'm
appreciate
sure
that.
she probably taught you how to use some of the different functions on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is true. And as those of us who were not born speaking computer, of which I was the generation, it takes a lot of people helping. And I will say that my 11th grade students are a lot more willing to help me figure out how to use my my smartphone or a particular program on my computer than my natural born children.
Oh, yes.
So, but to get back to what Jason's doing, the future of the youth, I think what we've seen in the last month, what we've seen in the last couple weeks, really makes me feel good about our children's future, about the youth of today and where they're going to be tomorrow. Because you know what? Bottom line is they're going to be running the world tomorrow.
They're going to be the future CEOs and the future government, in government and presidents of different companies and organizations and planners. So they're going to be very important for the future.
And maybe President of the United States.
Maybe even President of the United States.
So
It's definitely possible. But like I said, it's important for them to kind of to understand that we continue to be leaders for the world that we live in.
And however you get that leadership experience and however you get the comfort and if you're somebody and you're listening and maybe the kids next door, that their parents really don't give them a lot of input on things, and you might suggest that they could be part of a youth group at church, or even part of the CCO. Now you're connected. You're sponsored by Westside Church, and you have a presence on the campus of Indian River State College. Do you have the ability to grow that presence to other institutions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in partnership with Westside Church. So we're across the nation. We've been around since 1971. It was actually based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but they're on over 90 campuses nationwide. Or maybe more. But I am the first one in Florida, so that's why it's not very unknown around in this areas. But yeah, we have the capability of growing to other campuses. That's something we're working on right now with some other partnerships in Florida to also bring CCO in the greater Orlando area, Fort Lauderdale area, to some of those campuses there. We feel it's important.
And if you are interested in being a part of that growth, you can actually call Jason and get more information. Is the information, would that be on the Westside Church's website?
No, it'd be on ccojubilee.org.
Okay.
ccojubilee.org. And you can find my name on there, and all my contact information is on the website.
And you can also contact Troy and Westside Church on the website. I know you guys have an awesome website. You have a Facebook page as well. So thanks for joining me. I've been talking to Jason Fletcher and Troy Ingersoll. And you've been listening to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show. We'll be back next week with more.
The Sue Ellen Sanders Show. Saturdays at 11:05 a.m. Monday evenings at 6:05 on WPSL AM 1590, celebrating 25 years and counting. And WPSL.com, webcaster to the world.